Hello, Note. My, all blinged up this time around. Welcome to another episode of Mobile Stuff Review. I'm back with another review after a long 2 years. Sorry about the delay. Sit back and enjoy. It's 1956, and the world is abuzz with massive economic changes with the rise of the middle class. Christian Dior commissioned Swarovski to develop a special color to represent their new vision. The result, a shimmery, iridescent rainbow of brilliantness called Aurora Borealis, or better known on the streets as AB, inspired by the Northern Lights, or maybe it was just some shellfish. Now, in 2019, no longer relegated to crystals and sea creatures, this color has been unleashed on the Note. Let's see how the Note improves on its predecessor, the Note 9. Add a new wide-angle camera lens, replace the heart rate sensors with a pair of depth vision cameras, and whoops, move the fingerprint sensor under the front display. Remove the headphone jack because creators and power users definitely don't need it. Nix the iris sensors because who needs secure facial ID? And silently remove the LED notifications too. Move the proximity and light sensors under the display, that's pretty cool. And finally, punch a hole in the display for the front cam. And there you have it, the new Note 10. Alright, these are just external changes, but it does break the trend of always giving you more. Every new Note generation was uncompromising, just kept improving, adding to the deck, whether it was wireless charging, iris sensors, dual cameras, it just kept piling on. As you'll see during this review, the Note 10 is the first in the series to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Let's continue. First, the exterior. It's a very sleek and modern design, no question about that, with those squared off edges reminiscent of the Sony Xperia line. But then it inherits the same problems with the Sony. It's too boxy, resulting in an ergonomic nightmare. Due to the sharp corners, the already large phone is made even more difficult to use with the edges of the phone being that much further away. Also, those sharp edges love to catch the lining of pockets, making it frustrating to slip in and out. Haptics. The Note 10 uses a linear vibration motor that can produce very crisp vibrations, like the iPhone XS Max. There's not much difference between the two now. That signature very sharp Apple Taptic vibration is now available in the Note 10. Feels like a little hammer inside the phone tapping away. Most people in a blind test would never know. That's how close it is. The under-display fingerprint sensor, you hear a lot about the slowness of it compared to other phones that use optical sensors. As you see in the water and oil test, I think they made the right decision. But there's a major advantage to using ultrasonic. Security. The whole point of even having it. It's much harder to spoof than the optical ones. Stay away from those. Also, stay away from the facial unlock by camera. It's got to be one of the weakest methods in use today to unlock phones. Okay, enough ranting, back to the fingerprint test. Let's wrap this fingerprint test with French fry fingers. This year, like every year, Samsung pumps out the best displays. I guess that makes sense. They save the best for themselves. Let's take a look. We've got the same diamond pentile matrix OLED display with double the amount of smaller green LEDs with larger red and blues. It's simply the best. I think a few DisplayMate quotes sums it up nicely. Performance gets the usual bump, nothing special at around 10%. It's actually the same processor in the S10 series, but instead of 8 nanometers, it's a 7 nanometer chip. For benchmarks, we'll just run through some of the more popular ones. Alright, taking a look at the storage speeds. With reads over 1600 megabytes per second, it's actually faster than the MacBook I'm editing this video on. The write speeds are slower at roughly 500 megabytes per second, but that's in line with real-world SATA 3 interface speeds. Wow. My favorite performance task is exporting a 4K file. I cut the first minute, move it to the back, add a 30-second title to the front, and Gaussian blur to the last minute, and export. I like this test because I can run this on any platform, PC, Mac, or phones. Okay, for 4K export, we get a respectable 2 minutes 15 seconds. For comparison, the S8 did it in 2 minutes 39 seconds for a whopping 15% improvement. Doesn't seem like much, but I did add a Gaussian blur to make the export a bit harder. But SD storage is different. It got a huge bump in performance. It's using UFS 3.0. Instead of benchmarks, I'll just be copying a 26GB file into the phone from an external T5 drive. Then I'll copy it internally within the phone. Copying it from the external drive takes 1 minute 38 seconds. But copying the file internally between folders takes longer at 2 minutes 16 seconds. Apparently these are the fastest you'll be finding in mobile phones this year. On to battery. I'm using PC Mark since I like their rundown test using a variety of tasks such as web browsing and video editing. They do only run it down to 20%, so this is just to give you a benchmark. The Note 10 lasted a whopping 13 hours and 29 minutes. Now onto the second big upgrade of this year, the camera. The addition of the ultra-wide lens along with better image processing finally completes the camera system. The image processing used in this gen is a stellar improvement over previous ones. The front cam is a 10 megapixel 26mm equivalent lens, a decent field of view with the crop mode. For the rear cam, let's take a look at all three stacked on top of each other to get a sense, and then zoom in. If you zoom into the tele-image and compare to the wide lens, you'll see the details are there. Even live focus is improved, with both objects in front and behind the focus plane correctly blurred out, as you can see as we progressively step through these images. Night mode is also really good. In a room lit by one candle, it only uses a half-second shutter, but produced a fairly detailed and sharp image. Compare that to a softer image taken with a 10-second exposure using manual mode. Heck, let's compare it to the APS-C camera that I'm using to do this review. The APS-C camera used an 8-second shutter. Yes, it crushes the Note, but it's still impressive how the Note 10 performs with a half-second shutter speed. Let's cycle through the different lenses in video mode. The field of view is similar to when taking photos. The video camera also takes advantage of the three lenses and gets some real-time effects. Except for live focus here, the other effects require a human face, which is kind of a bummer. And that's why I'm using this lovely guy's face. Zoom mics are the rage this year, but do they really work? I have two phones with different music genres and languages, with the left side slightly louder. Let's take a listen. Let's take a look at slow motion. The high frame rate slow motion gets all the attention, but how about 1080p at 240 frames per second? The image still looks soft, but definitely usable. DeX's upgrade this year is unfortunately limited to accessibility. Now you can use your PC and Mac to open the DeX desktop interface and drag files between them. I was hoping DeX would finally support 4K monitors. Who would be using DeX, except for those power users and geeks that just want to tinker? You can see here I've connected it to a 40-inch 4K curved TV that I use as a monitor. DeX will only allow for a 1080p 60 frames per second connection, with a 2.5K option grayed out. I'm not sure why. But you might be saying, why not use a DeX pad? It doesn't matter, I've tried. Here's the worst part. If you go into mirroring mode outside of DeX, then the phone will connect at 4K 60 frames per second. Like here. Presumably so you can play those nice 4K videos back on your TV. Please Samsung, fix this and make DeX support 4K. It gets worse, with Linux on DeX beta. This is probably the most exciting thing Samsung was working on, as it would have allowed a new class of productivity users to join the Note family. We're talking millions of developers, students of information systems and engineering. But unfortunately, although the Note 10 with 12GB of RAM and UFS 3.0 fast storage would have been the perfect phone to run Linux, Samsung discontinued support for it, like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It doesn't really get better. With Bixby 2.0, or should I say Bixby with IoT support. You notice they didn't mention Bixby in the keynote because it actually took a step back. They seem to be rewriting the base to support IoT's devices and introduced capsules. Perhaps this is a good long-term strategy, but the main benefit of Bixby was the deeper control over the phone compared to other assistants, which is now gone. Sure, you get well-defined commands wrapped in little capsules, as you see here in the Gallery app, but lesser control than before. Watch what Bixby 1.0 could do. Hi Bixby. Turn on flashlight. Hi Bixby. Initiate self-destruct.
Let's tweet it when you're ready.
Bixby, however, did pick up something called routines, where the phone will change settings depending on contextual information like location and time. This is actually a continuation of a feature they had back in 2012 called Tech Tiles, which were NFC stickers. The user would just trigger these changes by tapping on the NFC stickers that they've placed around their environment. Like say you had a sticker on your car dash, you could just tap it and go into GPS mode. Now with routines, the phone can automatically detect by location or time that you're in your car and trigger the same settings. Okay, enough about DeX and Bixby. The speakers are really good, but a bit on the bright side. The highs are definitely better compared to last gen, but they've lost some low-end punch. In this comparison, you'll notice the iPhone has slightly fuller lows and mids. The Note has more detailed and clearer highs, which I do prefer. Which is better? I guess it just comes down to preference. Let's wrap up this review. As a longtime Note user, I'm concerned. The Note series was the SUV of smartphones. People buy SUVs not because they're going to go off-road or use the rugged features, but because they can if they want. Removing the headphone jack was just the wrong time to annoy the base of creators and professionals. DeX is promising but stagnant. Instead of making it more useful, they just added additional access to it. But if no one wants to go to the destination, it doesn't matter how many bridges you build. Samsung should invest more into DeX and productivity use cases. They kinda did with the built-in video editor, but should really go all in. Buy Luma Fusion and port it over to Android and make a DeX compatible version that really stands out. Then they'd have a cross-platform super app that dominates mobile video production, which is clearly an emerging market. They also need to realize that the Note doesn't have to be the biggest phone on the block anymore. Let's hope the Note 11 goes back to its SUV roots, just the most productive and capable. A size in between the two 10s with a headphone jack, because no compromises is what makes the Note series the Note series.